The restaurant buzzed with energy as customers chatted over their meals, but one waitress had her eyes locked on a man who had just walked in. He was well dressed, but she didn't like the way he looked. With a smirk, she approached, her voice laced with fake politeness. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" she asked, glancing him up and down. The man didn't react, at least not in the way she expected. He simply smiled, his confidence unshaken. As the meal went on, she found small ways to make him uncomfortable, taking forever to bring his drink, rolling her eyes when he spoke, and making sure his table got the worst service. A few customers noticed, but she didn't care. To her, he didn't belong. Then, just as she handed him the bill with a smug grin, he pulled something from his pocket. The entire restaurant went silent. The man slowly unfolded the paper he had pulled from his pocket, his calm demeanor unchanged. The waitress crossed her arms, still convinced she had the upper hand. A few nearby diners stole glances, sensing the tension. The manager, a middle-aged man in a crisp shirt, noticed the shift in atmosphere and started making his way over. "You seem very confident," the man said, his voice steady but firm. He placed the paper on the table, tapping it lightly with his fingers. "Are you always as welcoming to your customers?" The waitress scoffed. "I just like to make sure people know their place," she muttered under her breath, not realizing how loud she had spoken. The manager arrived just in time to hear her words. His face went pale as he recognized the name on the document, the same name printed on every paycheck he had ever received. The manager's hands trembled slightly as he picked up the paper. His eyes scanned the name, and his heart sank. He slowly turned to the man, suddenly aware of who he was. The owner. The very person who had built this restaurant from the ground up. The realization hit him like a brick. The waitress, still oblivious, huffed. "Is there a problem?" she asked, tilting her head in annoyance. She had spent the entire night treating this man as if he were beneath her. Now she was starting to sense that something was off. The owner leaned back in his chair, watching her closely. "I'd say there is," he said, his voice measured. "But I'm more interested in hearing your thoughts. Tell me, how do you think an owner should be treated?" The waitress froze, her face suddenly pale. The other employees, now watching closely, exchanged nervous glances. The waitress swallowed hard, her confidence slipping. The way everyone was looking at her now, it was different. The restaurant had fallen into an uneasy silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She glanced at the manager, expecting him to step in, but he wouldn't even meet her eyes. I didn't mean anything by it," she stammered, forcing a nervous smile. "It was just a joke." The owner let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "A joke," he repeated, as if testing the word. "Tell me, is this how you treat all your customers? Or was there something about me that made you feel comfortable acting this way?" Her breath caught in her throat. She knew exactly what he was asking, but she had no answer. The other employees shifted uncomfortably, waiting to see what would happen next. Then, in a voice calm but firm, the owner said, "Follow me." The waitress hesitated, but the weight of the moment left her no choice. Her feet felt heavy as she followed the owner through the restaurant, eyes burning into her from all sides. She wasn't sure where they were going, but the air felt thick with something she couldn't quite place. Was it fear? Regret? Or the sinking realization that she had made the biggest mistake of her life? The owner led her past the kitchen doors, into a private office. He gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing, gripping her apron as if it might hold her together. The silence stretched until he finally spoke. "Tell me something," he said, folding his arms. "How long have you worked here?" She licked her lips, forcing out, "A few months." He nodded, then reached for a folder on the desk. Flipping it open, he pulled out a paper and slid it toward her. Her stomach dropped when she saw it, her own job application, and underneath, a note she had never noticed before. It was written in the manager's handwriting. **** strong work ethic, but attitude needs improvement. ***. She looked up, her pulse racing. The owner's expression remained unreadable, but his next words sent chills down her spine. "I saw this months ago," he said, tapping the paper. "I wanted to see if you'd prove it wrong." The waitress felt her throat tighten. She had no words, no excuse, nothing to defend herself. The owner leaned forward slightly, his voice steady but firm. "I believe in giving people chances. I was once in a position where people judged me before they knew me. That's why I built this place, to create opportunities, not to watch them be wasted." Her fingers curled into fists. She wanted to look away, but his gaze held her in place. I didn't know," she finally whispered. He exhaled, shaking his head. "That's the problem. You didn't bother to know." For a long moment, the silence between them was deafening. Then, just as she braced for the worst, he did something she didn't expect. He gave her a choice. "You can walk away right now," he said, "or you can prove that note wrong." Her eyes widened. He wasn't firing her. The weight of her actions hit her all at once. She had spent the entire night trying to humiliate the very person who had the power to change her future. And yet, instead of revenge, he was offering her something else: redemption. Tears burned in her eyes as she nodded. "I want to do better." The owner studied her for a moment before standing up. "Then start now." And with that, he walked out, leaving her with a second chance she never saw coming. The waitress sat there for a long time, staring at the paper in front of her. She had been so sure of herself before, so quick to judge. Now, she saw things differently. The man she had looked down on had shown her more kindness than she had ever deserved. Taking a deep breath, she stood up and walked back into the restaurant. The other employees watched her cautiously, unsure of what to expect. But instead of her usual arrogance, she picked up a tray and quietly got to work. She refilled drinks, cleared tables, and greeted customers with a sincerity she had never shown before. The owner sat in a corner, observing. He didn't need to say anything. He had made his point. And as the waitress moved through the restaurant, she realized something. Respect wasn't about power or status. It was about how you treated people, no matter who they were.